¿cómo
Hello,
están?
friends. How are you? I'm Pris, and greeting you from Mexico City. I'm very happy today because today in the afternoon we are gonna see each other again at the Vida Inn Drive-In. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me tell you. It is an event we're organizing because we wanna reconnect with you. We wanna definitely see you again. And if we don't know you, we want to know you. So we wait for you at 6 o'clock sharp at Vida Inn Drive-In. Today, I am greeting you from the place where we're going to do it in Mexico City. So, if you are here, I will wait for you here at Magno Centro at the main entrance. So, remember, 6 o'clock sharp, our friends in Monterrey will receive you at the new facilities. We're very happy because you will be able to know from the outside, from your car, the new facilities, but it's great that you can be a part of this party. And from our friends in Saltillo, we'll wait for you in the parking lot. And again, we are very happy because we will see you again today. How can you prepare for this event? Well, we would love for you to go with your family, for you to be there with all the happiness and willingness to have a great time with your car decorated with posters and making a lot of noise. For now, let's enjoy our service. Today it's the closing offer series Better For It. Actually, Roberto Bautista is ready to present this closing from the Saltillo Auditorium. We're very happy because we know this will be very useful for your life, and I personally hope you enjoy this service a lot. See you. If a crisis is an opportunity, then a big crisis is a great opportunity. A great opportunity for being better relationally, being better financially, being better in our personal growth, being better in our spirituality. But this of being better is not something that happens because of an accident. It's not that we just wake up and boom, I'm better. That's why we've decided to do this series because we understand the importance of being better for it. Friends, today we're closing our series Better For It, and I'm very glad to say hi to you. Today I'm here in the Sautillo Auditorium. Glad to be here. A special greetings to the people in Saltillo, to the Vida Inn family in Saltillo, and to everyone in Monterrey, in Mexico City, and to our family at Vida Inn. And a very special greeting to all those people who are connecting maybe for the first or second time, or maybe you're saying, Roberto, I didn't go usually to Saltillo, Mexico City, or to Monterrey, but I am here on Vida Inn Online, so welcome to you too. Definitely, thank you for being connected. I am extremely happy of all us being connected, especially if this is your first time with us. Now, listen. Since I told you a moment ago, the fact of being better, it's not something that happens by accident. We have to be intentional. And in this effort of being intentional, we have asked ourselves very important questions along this series. Alejandro talked to us at the beginning of the series of questions that helped us to size what it is being better about. And the question was this: how can we be better for this or thanks to this? And we have a great this in front of us, which is COVID-19, which is common for everyone. But even though we have a this that is common to all of us, each one of us have a particular this. And your this is different than mine. Maybe yours has to do with a family situation, with a challenge you have in front of you, a topic that may be relational in your marriage or with your kids because they're teenagers or because they're too young, or maybe you have a health issue with your children or with you, a health issue with your parents. But your this is relational or in your marriage. Maybe your this has to do with your finances or has to do with your professional development at work, in the growth of your business, or maybe it has to do with your academic performance. There are different this for each one of us. And the key issue and the important issue is that the question says, how can we be better because of this? Not how can we solve this, not how can I find a solution to it, because if we address this trying to solve it, we move too quickly into the this disappearing. Actually, addressing the situation with this question, how can we be better for it, helps us to not move too quickly into it disappearing, but rather understanding it as an opportunity to be better and not hurrying to make it disappear. And this question is powerful and not easily understood. You have to take your time to ask yourself this question. Another thing we learned last week with Jair was something he told us about a superpower we all have, and it's this. We have the superpower of responding, it's a respondability, and I love to see this as a superpower because it is the truth. The fact of you knowing how to respond before different circumstances, it's a superpower. I love the phrase, maybe all of you or most of us have heard, that says life is 10% what happens and 90% how you respond before what happens. These are not motivational words. Life is truly comprised that way. As complicated or difficult it is that we're going through or we went through, that's only 10% of it, because 90%, the whole of life, is found in how you and I respond to that circumstance we had to live. And that helps us to understand this. The way you and I respond to that 10% will determine our future, will determine where we will end in life, how we will be remembered tomorrow. How we respond determines our life for tomorrow. And if you are a believer, maybe you would say, no, God is who determines. And listen, God wants what's best for you and for me. And it was He who gave us that capacity to respond. Listen, every time we have different circumstances before us, it seems as if we had two great responses. One is to react, and the other one is to respond. When we react, normally we react, and though they are quick, they are immediate. And when we do react, things get complicated. They get complicated immediately, and they also get complicated towards the future. Today, I want us to talk about this, because when you and I react before something that happens, we are giving or handing over the control of our life, of our destiny, of our legacy. Actually, I would like to think of it in these terms. I'm not only surrendering it, but I'm throwing it away. I'm throwing away the control of my life. I'm giving it over to what? To that circumstance I'm going through. But when I respond, when I give that measured response, when I stop to think, when I do not rush, but I rather stop and think thoroughly what I have in front of me, then I'm taking control of my life. I'm taking control of my destiny, of my legacy. That legacy I will leave to my family and to the people around me, even to society. The fact or the matter of responding is very powerful. It is truly a superpower. And last week, Jair talked to us about one person who represents this superpower amazingly. He is part of the story of Israel, part of Egypt's history also. His name was Joseph. And when we see Joseph's history in detail, we can see a man who definitely responded before life and before every situation, but he did not react. He's a great example, an inspiration to us, but also he's also a model, and that is Joseph. Now, we're going to see or talk about a part of Joseph's life. We're going to start where Jair left off last week, and this was here. Joseph was kidnapped once, and it's complicated, the fact of being kidnapped, but your brother's kidnapping you, that's very complicated. Sold twice. The first time when his brothers sold him to a group of merchants who traded slaves, and the second time when these merchants sold Joseph to one of the captains of the guard of Pharaoh in Egypt. He was incriminated. He was incriminated, framed for something he didn't commit. He was simply incriminated because of the frustration of the other person. And the result of that incrimination was Joseph being thrown into prison. He was incarcerated. And you read this list and you say, oh man, he's jinxed. But there's more. But before going there, let me tell you something. For you and I, probably it is difficult to identify ourselves with this for most of us, of being kidnapped and sold, incriminated, or imprisoned. Maybe we don't identify easily with that, but with what we can easily identify ourselves is what's behind this. I see this and I think of rejection. The rejection he felt when his brothers kidnapped him and sold him. The treason because they were his older brothers who in a way should care for him and didn't. Treason was present there, injustice, all the slander that was said about him, and probably you can feel identified more with that. There's also the issue of loneliness that Joseph, as time went by, Joseph couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Actually, things got worse. First, he got kidnapped, then he got sold again, he ended up in prison. It seemed as if this terror story, this darkness that he had to live, this wilderness he had to go through, had no end. And you and I can identify with that, right? That's Joseph's story. Nevertheless, before all those situations, he did not react, he responded. And that's fascinating. And the list goes on. And it goes on why? Because after Joseph was in prison, he was some time there, two characters arrived at the prison, the cupbearer and the baker of Pharaoh. They got there, knew Joseph, they became friends in a way, time went by, and one day Joseph saw them, but he saw them worried. He went then and told them, "What's the matter with you guys?" And they said, "No, Joseph, we had a dream." But Joseph, it wasn't a dream like those dreams you usually have. This dream was very vivid. It was very real. It was so real that we believe this dream means something. Joseph was listening to them and he told them this. He said, "Look, my God can help you to understand your dream." Now, with this type of answer from Joseph, which is the kind of answers we see in Joseph's life all the time, and they startle us because he said, "My God can help you in this situation." Which God? The God who didn't help you, Joseph, for your brothers not kidnapping you, the God who did not help you when they sold you, the God that didn't help you and now you're in jail, that God? Joseph, even though he had lived through all those things, knew God was with him, God hadn't moved and wasn't absent, and that God could help them. And that's amazing. And I don't want you to lose sight of this. Joseph told them, "My God can help you." So they told him the dream each one of them had, and Joseph gave them the interpretation of the dream. The interpretation Joseph gave them happened exactly as Joseph said. One of them died, the other one was restored happily to palace with Pharaoh, and right before the cupbearer being reinstated to palace, Joseph told him something, and this is what he said. "I beg you to not forget me, but when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." And when you read this description, it is clear something. Joseph didn't want to be in prison. He wasn't happy with all that he had gone through. Not at all. He didn't want to be there, nor he would have asked for all that happened to him to happen to him. Nevertheless, Joseph didn't stop at complaining. He wasn't resentful. He wasn't stuck on complaining constantly because of what had happened. He was not a victim. He was not there. He decided to understand God was with him, to do things the best way possible, and always look for opportunities to help other people. That was Joseph. So the cupbearer went back to Pharaoh, and immediately after he talked to him and he said, "Pharaoh, I was in prison, but there was someone there who helped me." No, that didn't happen. What did happen was exactly the opposite of what Joseph asked him. When he said, "Please don't forget me," that's what he did. He forgot about Joseph. And another thing that I think it's great about this story is Joseph was not resentful with the cupbearer. He didn't say, I helped him and he forgot me. I told him not to. I helped him and he forgot me. He didn't become a victim. He didn't go and said, when I get out of here, he's gonna know what's good. Several years went by, and then Pharaoh had a dream. That dream was also something very real, very vivid to Pharaoh, so much so that he summoned all the summons from his kingdom to tell them, this was my dream, and I believe this represents something, so I want to tell it to you to see if you in a way can help me understand what this is about. So all the wise men heard him. None of them knew how to interpret it. He was very uncalm. And the cupbearer suddenly, several years later, remembered there was someone who helped him decipher a dream. So he went to Pharaoh and he said, Pharaoh, I was in prison. And he tells him that there was someone who helped him. And Pharaoh said, bring over Joseph. They took him out of jail, brought him before the Pharaoh. Pharaoh told him about the dream, and Joseph interpreted the dream. And the interpretation was the following. There would be 7 years of plenty, of a lot of plenty in Egypt, and then after those 7 years there would come another 7 years of famine, of scarcity, and it was going to be the great scarcity in all the region. In the midst of all this, Joseph was telling Pharaoh, he did not only interpret the dream, but he dared to give advice to Pharaoh. That was daring, but he did it. And when Pharaoh was listening to this, Pharaoh was so impacted because of Joseph's wisdom that when Joseph revealed the dream and then gave the advice, Pharaoh was impressed and asked Joseph to be the one who carried out the plan or the advice Joseph was giving him to face the situation that was coming. So Joseph ended up being the second most important person in Egypt, which was the most important kingdom in that region, maybe even the world back then. That's why Joseph's story is fascinating. First he was okay, then he was kidnapped, then was sold, and then incarcerated, and now he became the second most important person of the most important nation. You can read the history in Genesis 40 to Genesis 50. You can find it there. The point is, Joseph ended like that. Years went by. Joseph executed the plan. It was very well executed. Joseph made such wise decisions, and there is so much richness in his history because he made sure there were silos all across Egypt, different cities. Joseph invented the distribution center concept. He was extremely brilliant, and during 7 years he managed amazing Egypt as a nation. It was very prosperous. After this, the 7 years of scarcity arrived and the 7 years of famine in all the region. Famine impacted other cities, other nations, and then people, since months started to go by and years started to go by, they found out Egypt was the only place there was grain because of the good decisions Joseph had made. Famine reached the region where Joseph lived with his family, where his brothers and father lived. And then Joseph's father talked to his sons and said, you know what, we're going to starve. You have to go to Egypt and buy food because we have none. So Joseph's brothers decided to go to Egypt and buy food. And this is what happened. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Look, here are Joseph's brothers, and don't forget who they are. Joseph's brothers were the ones who sold him, those who kidnapped him and sold him. They are Joseph's brothers, and they were there. They arrived. They were in front of Joseph and didn't recognize Joseph because the last time they saw him, he was about 17 years old. He was about 40 in this moment, and he looked like an Egyptian. So they didn't recognize them. They bowed down, head to the ground, because that was the custom at the time. and they were there, and Joseph knew who they were. Joseph recognized them. So don't lose sight of this, because I want you to think of this scene in front of you, knelt down on the ground. You are the most powerful person in the room, and there in front of you are the people who have hurt you the most. They're responsible of all your miseries. They are in front of you. What do you do? What do you do in a situation like this? Because you've suffered a lot. It hasn't been little the frustration that you've been through, and they are in front of you. You never did anything for them to do to you what they did, and they are face to the ground. That scene is something we have to keep in mind, because Joseph at that moment didn't react. It is impactful. Now, it's not that Joseph told them, "Oh, great, welcome. Where do you come from? Come over, come in, welcome. We are here to serve you." No, he didn't welcome them that way, but Joseph didn't react against them. Joseph saw them, knew who they were. Joseph took the time to think what he was going to do. And Joseph found different ways of interact with them, but he didn't rush to react or to respond in a different way. It was a complex situation, what he had in front of him. And what he did, which was fascinating, was he took the time to decipher what he was going to do. He took the time to think and to see. He found a way to keep in touch with them, but he didn't decide immediately. He was thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my brothers? How will I respond? Actually, in the story, it is mentioned that he was overwhelmed with emotion and went to his room to cry because it was so complex for him. He went back and was with his brothers again, who didn't know who Joseph was. That was the situation. But time went by and Joseph deciphered, this is what I'm going to do. And this is a characteristic of people who respond and do not react. They take the time to think. That's what Joseph did. So the time came when Joseph had to tell them who he was, and this is what happened. "I am Joseph." And then he asked the question, "Is my father still living?" And then the brothers responded this. But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. And of course they were terrified. Imagine the scene. Imagine them, because they went through different things with Joseph and they know he is the most important person there. Above him is only Pharaoh. The army, the soldiers, everyone is at his will. And they find out he is the brother they mistreated, the brother they humiliated, they kidnapped and sold. What do you think went through his mind? That's when the famous phrase, "No way Jose," was born, because the fact was this. The situation was amazing. The brothers are there and they hear his brother say, "I am Joseph." They immediately thought, he's going to kill us. He's going to kill all of us. He's going to incarcerate us or kill us. But they thought the worst. What they didn't know, what they had no idea of, is Joseph was and is a man who lived all that time with the certainty that God was with him, and that a long time he perfected the art of responding. With every situation he faced, Joseph learned every day more to better respond. That was Joseph. They didn't know it, but before the situation, Joseph, who had lived with the certainty God was with him, knew then how to respond. And at that time, he responded with forgiveness. And this was his response. "Please come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother, Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." And you listen to this answer and you think, that cannot be. When you listen to that answer, this of saying, do not be distressed, It wasn't you, it was God who sent me here, and He sent me with a purpose, that of preserving your life. Friends, we see this answer and we think, where can you birth an answer like that? How is it possible for someone in front of people who have hurt him so much? How is someone able to respond like that with forgiveness, with saying, don't worry, do not be distressed, you didn't want to do this? What? Friends, that is the response of someone who lives with this certainty of knowing God is with him or her. That is what gave Joseph, or allowed Joseph, to respond the way he did. Because when you and I live with the confidence, that conviction, God is with us, then we will be able to respond. One of the characteristics a person who is convinced God is with them is that they understand what is in front of them with a different point of view. They have a different perspective of everything in front of them. A person who lives believing, convinced that God is with them, sees situations in their life very differently from other people. They have a different perspective. And that is the result of living, trusting God is with us. And that's what happened to Joseph. Joseph understood this. He understood that what was in front of him was greater than only that. And the way he responded before that situation not only would impact that present moment, but also the future. That scene, that moment represent what we're talking about completely. Because at that moment where these 12 brothers were, including Joseph, they represented the 12 tribes. They not only represent them, they are the 12 tribes from where the nation of Israel was birthed. The nation of Israel, you and I know in 2020, that nation of Israel comes precisely from those 12 brothers. It comes from the 12 tribes that were formed from them. So imagine what was at stake was not little thing. And what's most important, from those 12 tribes was born the Messiah. Now imagine if Joseph had taken vengeance. Imagine if Joseph had decided to incarcerate them or execute them. What would have happened? What was at stake was not something little. But when you and I are capable of responding before a situation, the impact into the future is incredible. Friends, this capacity of responding, this respondability is something spectacular. You and I have to understand that what is in front of you or in front of me is something greater. The way we are able to respond before every situation will impact my future, your future, but not only our future, but the future of other people, the future of people around us, and probably the future of people we don't even know today. What is in front of us is always greater than what we can think of. And the way we respond is determining, because it will mark the way in which tomorrow we will be remembered and the legacy we can give. Not so long ago, I was watching a movie with my children, and there was a grandfather, and he had a spectacular relationship with his granddaughter. She loved him and admired him. It was great, actually. And when I saw the movie, I told my children, I want to be that kind of grandpa. I want to be that grandpa whose grandchildren love him and admire him. I want to be with him. And I understand this. I know God wants that for me, but at the end of the day, who will determine I am that grandpa is going to be me. How, Roberto? With my capacity of responding before what's in front of me, because I need to say, am I going to respond or to react? So today I want to end with the question Jair told us last week. Remember it? Let's see it. And it's a question that has two parts. How would someone respond in my circumstances? And that's an easy part to respond. You can and I can respond it quickly. I know how someone in my circumstances would respond. But the second part of this question is where the richness of the question is found. How would someone respond in my circumstances if they were certain God was with them? How would someone respond in my circumstances if they were convinced God was with them, that there is more than what's in front of me, that what's in front of me, it's not the whole history of my life, but just a chapter? How would someone respond when they understand God definitely is with them? How? You know, this question is so important and it's not easily responded. You need to take time to answer it. How would you answer? How would someone answer when they are convinced that God is with him or her? Friends, just the fact of taking the time to ask myself the question helps me to not react, and there is a richness there. Only asking myself that question helps me to not react, because responding is not natural. What is natural for you and I is to react. So when I stop and I ask myself this question, how would someone respond in my circumstances if they were convinced God was with them? By only asking the question, I am taking a time to prepare a good answer and not to yield to a bad reaction. Friends, I want to tell you something. God writes on crooked lines. God always brings good out of bad. And if you and I can grow in the confidence that God is with us, and we have that present in our minds every time we are facing a situation, I can assure you, God will always bring good out of bad. What Roberto's saying is so true. When fear comes knocking at our doors, when fear wants to invade us, you and I can respond, raising our eyes to heavens and fixing our eyes on Jesus, knowing God is for us, that our Heavenly Father is with us, and instead of listening to the voice of fear, you and I can listen to the voice of God, remembering that He is for us, that He is on our side, and that together with Him, you and I will be able to go through whatever we are living, and together we can get out of this.
Juntos hoy cantamos como hermanos, Él nos unió, hijos de todo pueblo. Este es el tiempo de alzar la voz. No escucharé al miedo, mi mirada pongo en el cielo. En tu gracia firme estoy. Tú me amas tal como soy. Valiente seré, yo sé. Mi esperanza está en Él. Oh. se oirá en los cielos el sonido de nuestra adoración. Las murallas caen a sus pies al oír su voz. Por su gracia Él nos limpió. Cuán bueno es Dios, su nombre es Cristo. Se oirá en los cielos el sonido de nuestra adoración. Las murallas caen a sus pies al oír su voz. Por su gracia Él nos limpió. Cuán bueno es Dios, su nombre es Cristo. Se oirá en los cielos el sonido de nuestra adoración. Las murallas caen a sus pies al oír su voz. Por su gracia Él nos limpió. Cuán bueno es Dios, su nombre es Cristo. Oh, 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 se oirá en los cielos el sonido de nuestra adoración. Las murallas caen a sus pies al oír su voz. Por su gracia Él nos limpió. Cuán bueno es Dios, su nombre es Cristo. Cristo, el que salva, la esperanza está en Él. Cristo, luz del cielo, Rey eterno, amigo fiel. Amigo fiel. Amigo fiel. Háblame cuando ya no tenga voz. Tú me comprendes, tú me comprendes. Ven a mí en el valle del temor. Tú me comprendes, Dios, tú me comprendes. Tú me comprendes, Dios, tú me comprendes. Te entrego mis preocupaciones, mis dudas y temores. Tú eres más de lo que pensé, más grande eres tú. No haré más negociaciones con el Dios del universo. Tú eres más de lo que pensé, más grande de lo que imaginé. Oh Dios, oh, creo en ti, pero ayúdame al dudar. Tú me comprendes, tú me comprendes. Yo descansaré en ti, Dios. Todo lo pondré en ti, Dios, yo descansaré en ti, Dios. Todo lo pondré, te entrego mis preocupaciones, mis dudas y temores. Tú eres más de lo que pensé, más grande eres tú, y no haré más negociaciones con el Dios del universo. Tú eres más de lo que pensé, más grande eres tú, oh Dios, más grande de lo que pensé, más grande de lo que imaginé.
Amigos,
Friends, thank you very much for connecting to today's service. Remember, we'll see today at 6 o'clock sharp at Vida Inn Drive-In. See you.